All right, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. This is my conversation with you around the idea of mindset. Like this year, the most requested conversation has been mindset. Like, what do we do with our mindset? How do we think? What do we look at? What do we do? And you think about where you are and you think about where you want to be. And then you have to get very clear that there's an incredible road between where you are and where you want to be. There's also a giant past between where you are and where you were. That's just as true. So for today, some of you know me from real estate, and some of you maybe got a link or were told, hey, check this out, or whatever, and thank you for being here. It's my pleasure. So today, my real estate sales team operates in 96 cities across the country. I own a brokerage in Oregon. I own a brokerage in Phoenix. And it's been my life's pleasure to be able to build business and work and speak and influence and truly make a difference. But the biggest impact has been for me. The biggest growth is always inside. You see, we grow from the inside out, just like we rot from the inside out. You think about fruit and you think about how on the outside, fruit it might look perfect, but you cut inside and on the inside, it's rotten. We rot from the inside out. We grow from the inside out, which is why we get frustrated sometimes, which is why when like the time, it's like not moving. We want it to go, and it's just not moving fast enough. Like our willingness, our absolute willingness to stare at growth directly in the face and be okay with the amount of time it takes to get where we want to go. Our willingness to do that, I believe, is our greatest tool that we have to get there. It's the greatest single road that we have to get to the destination we want to be to. The problem is we struggle with it. We wrestle with it. Man, I do too. You see, and we can't become that which we want to be while we're worried about who we were. We can't become who we want while we're worried about what we've done. Can't be done. It won't work. And I want you to think for a moment, are you controlled by emotions or are you controlled by dreams? You see, emotions can be a liar. Dreams are the true north. And it was John Maxwell that said this. John said, dream believers are in abundance. Like the amount of people, you go into a room and there's 1,000 people in that room. There's going to be 1,000 dream believers, 100%. But there may just be one or two dream buyers. The people who will actually pay the price, the people who will say, I know how hard it is and I'm willing to do it. See, most of the time we just say things to ourselves and we tell ourselves how we're willing to do something. We tell ourselves that I'll do anything. And the truth is, no, you won't. You'll do anything until it's a little bit too hard. You'll do anything until it's a little bit uncomfortable. And then you're out. You're like, nope, that's not me. I'm out. I quit. And you think about that and you think like the goals and the dreams that you have, the things that you truly want to do, the things that you really want to become. After all, it's more important who you're becoming than what you're doing. The old saying is you're a human being, you're not a human doing. Like, who are you becoming? Like I love the quote that says, set a goal so big that you can't reach that goal until you become the person who can't not reach it. And we get so tied up sometimes, like we get so wrapped around the axle of some destination, like some finish line, that we forget the journey between here and there is what it's about. And I'm convinced if you'll fall in love with the journey, you'll quit thinking about the destination. I'm convinced if you'll fall in love with the journey, you'll just be running one day and you'll look down as if you're tripping over the destination. You'll be like, oh, whew, that was cool. What's the next one? I think that. Emotions can be liars. The old saying is keep your emotions between the lines, right? So today, we built this whole thing. By the way, we've raised over 17, where's the number? Here it is. 17, we've raised for No Kid Hungry. This is the third and final in this series to raise money for No Kid Hungry. We've raised $17,705. like, I am grateful to you. I'm honored. I'm honored. And I chose this, right? Like, and I want you to choose, like, one of the easiest ways to move forward, like one of the easiest ways to get out of a rut. By the way, we all get in ruts. And the only difference between a rut and a grave is the depth. So be careful how much time you spend in a rut. One of the easiest ways to get out of a rut, though, is to begin to help other people. You can't outgive it. And I chose No Kid Hungry because they've done an amazing job. And their goal is to eliminate, to remove, to eradicate hunger with kids and young adults and teens in our country. And they do an amazing job. And they do it through primarily through the school systems and the school districts. Well, during 2020, you could imagine how difficult that's become. And I remember being a kid. And my point a moment ago was, if you're going to choose a charity, choose one that you care about. Choose one that hits close to home. You see, my guess, my belief, like in the core of who I am, I believe there's somebody and something that's waiting for you to do that which is important on your heart. And if you don't do it, maybe nobody else has that dream. And they're waiting for you to become that person. Get off your ass and become that person. And I chose No Kid Hungry because I was hungry as a kid. I grew up incredibly poor, and I grew up, and I did this video on Instagram. By the way, if we're not connected on Instagram, I'd love to connect with you there. Cody Gibson 1 is my name there. I'd love to connect. And I did this video where I talked about how, has there ever been a time in your life that you were ashamed or embarrassed by something that wasn't your fault, wasn't your doing? And I grew up as a poor kid. And I remember I'd go to the lunch line. It was the poor kid lunch line. I'd go to the poor kid lunch line, and the lady, her name was Dolores. Dolores worked the cart, and she would give me like this brown paper bag. And some days it was the best meal that I had, but I wouldn't go until the very end of the lunchtime. And I would find a way to like walk around and keep myself busy because I was so ashamed of being in the poor kid lunch line, but I didn't create that life for me. And I'll never forget like the kindness, right? The old saying of be kinder than necessary because everyone's fighting a fight you know nothing about. Like, there's someone next to you that you might run into today that's literally just trying to keep their shit together. They're just trying to make it. They're just trying to make it. Maybe your smile, maybe a nice word, maybe just a gesture. You have no idea how far that could go. My guess is, if you're anything like me, you've been at the point where all you needed was just a smile from someone, just a nice word. Be that for somebody else. Anyway, Dolores would give me, like, if she had it, she would say, we have extras, and she'd give me 2 bags. Man, I'd eat them both. One of the things about my life is that I've always had really kind people around me. There's always been somebody who stood up for me. There's always been somebody who believed in me, even on the days I couldn't believe in myself. And so when you think about mindset, I want you to think about No Kid Hungry and what we could do for them. Now we're at $17,705. If you want to give any money today, we'll take your money. And the easiest way to do it, PayPal. If you want to use PayPal, it's Cody Gibson at KW. I should know this. It's my email address. PayPal is codygibson@kw.com. You can also Venmo. If you want to use Venmo, that's groovy. Venmo is Cody-Gibson, GIB-14, Cody-Gibson-14. It would be incredible. We had set the goal originally, Lacey will drop those into the chat box. We had set the goal originally to raise $20,000. I'm not amazing at math, but the difference of 17,700 and 20,000 is 2,305. So $2,295 is what we're short of to reach a goal of 20 grand. If I say something amazing today, every single dollar's gone to No Kid Hungry. I've donated my time for these 3, and it's been my pleasure. If you want to kick in some money, $5, $10, a bazillion bucks, you choose what works for you. By the way, if you're short on money right now, keep it. Like, if you look down and you go, man, like, I'd love to give $10, but that's my lunch. You keep the $10. You see, I believe there's somebody else who's got 20 today, and they could make up the difference for 2 people. You see, I've paid for gas with change from the ashtray of my car, not because I forgot my wallet, because that's all that I had. And if that's where you are, it's okay. By the way, I've had days in my life with no money. And I've had days in my life, which for me, a lot of money. And both times what I've learned is life is still just life. Our heart still feels the way our heart feels. Let's get into some motivation. You see, we're paid in direct proportion to the level of our thinking. And you think about the money that you make, and if you want to make more money, you just have to think at a higher level. But we're also paid, the other side of that truth is you can't just think bigger, you actually have to do bigger. We're paid in proportion to our level of our thoughts. Like the old saying is, money will meet you at your level of thinking. But the second part of it is you can't just think it, you actually have to do it. And so I would tell you that you're paid in proportion to the level of thinking that you're willing to do and the level of service that you're willing to give. Like how much service can you give? How much of an impact can you give to people? There's nobody on here who wouldn't want to make more money. There's nobody on here who couldn't do something with more money. There's nobody in here listening right now who doesn't have something on their heart that if you could write the check, man, you would fix that problem for somebody. And you would say, yeah, there's a challenge, there's a need. Yep, I'll write the check. I'm in. The world's waiting for you to do it. Are you willing to do it? And when you think about what you want to accomplish in life, I don't want you to think 0 to 100. 0 to 100 kills most dreams. It's an absolute, it's a bunch of crap. 0 to 100 doesn't work. You know what works? 0 to 10. You know what also works? 10 to 20 and 20 to 30 and 30 to 40. There's so many people who would love to double their income while working less hours. I don't know what freaking book that idiot read, but it doesn't exist. I don't know anybody who has doubled or tripled their income by working less hours. Let me say it this way. You don't efficiency your way to more income. No, you probably use brute force. You probably work your ass off. You probably stay up late. You probably get up early. And what you do is you throw time at it because you don't know. You are the least likely person. I have made peace with this. I am the least likely person to move me from where I am to where I want to be because of how I think. If I thought like the person of where I wanted to be, I'd already be there, but I don't. I think like the person who's stuck where I'm at. So I have to change the way I think. What you do is you use time, you use effort, you buy your way to bigger and better levels of performance, then you use efficiency to buy your time back. And the saying that would go with that is this: you can't lighten the load until you're willing to feel the burden of it. Are you willing to feel the burden of it? You don't know what to do until you're willing to feel the burden. You don't know how to lighten the load until you've walked with it. So don't think 0 to 100. 0 to 100 usually equates 0 to 0. We don't go anywhere. Just take a step forward. You can't beat somebody who won't stop. You can't beat somebody who won't quit. I was asked once what my superpower was, and it was a great question. And I immediately thought, my superpower most days is that I won't quit. My superpower most of the time is that you can't beat somebody who won't stop. Are you willing to be somebody who won't quit? Or are you the person that's made a habit of quitting? And there's a difference between quitting and stopping. That's a whole different conversation. One of my favorite books that Seth Godin wrote called The Dip. The whole book started, by the way, for me, it was a great book because it was short, like 90 pages, really, really short, really easy. I made it all the way through the 9th grade with a 1.6 or 1.7 GPA, never to return to school. They don't make people like me doctors. People like me don't become surgeons or attorneys. People like me go to work. We usually become salespeople. And what we find is we believe that our greatest asset, our greatest wealth determiner is people and human capital. And I believe yours is too. Our mindset is not on willpower. Our mindset is not on will call. You can't just go and get it whenever you want it. If you think about mindset today, mindset's a habit. And if you've made losing a habit, I believe that losing is much of a habit as much of a habit as winning is. And I think you fall into it. You see, when you constantly lose over and over and over again, you become a habitual loser. And I think it takes as much effort, if not more, to fail at things or lose at things as it does to win at things or to succeed at things. And you think about the things you want to do in your life. Like those great big things, like the goals, like the things that scare the shit out of you when you think about it. And you're like, I'm not even sure I can talk about it anymore. Like, I'm not even sure I believe in it. Is that stuff going to live in one day, or is this going to be day one? See, you don't have to be great to start. The coolest thing about success is you just have to start to be great. You can't beat somebody who doesn't stop. You see, nobody wakes up at the top of the mountain. Man, nobody wakes up and they're like, whoa, this is cool. How did I get here? Nobody does that. You've never heard the interview with Oprah where somebody goes, you know what, Opes? I'm convinced that's why they won't let me on the show. But you've never heard somebody say, you know what, Oprah? It was easier than I thought. It took less time than I thought. It took less money than I thought. It damaged me less than I expected. You've never heard that story because it doesn't happen. And if it did happen, we'd never tell the story because it wouldn't be duplicatable. You see, we think that we want things to be easy, but we don't. You don't even like easy. And yet we complain about things when they're difficult. We complain about things when they're hard. But the truth is, you don't even like easy anyway. I have a shark. I have a megalodon shark, which I already told you that I didn't graduate high school, so I had to go and Google what the hell that was. But I have this megalodon. Like I love stuff around me, like silly as it sounds. Well, here we go. This way. This little forward poster. I love it. Like I see the turtle and I see myself. You can't be somebody who doesn't stop. I'm not worried about how fast I'm moving somewhere. And I'm not worried about how someone looks at me on my journey. What I've learned is this: people are less concerned with you than you think they are. You think they're watching you? Trust me. They've got enough of their own problems. They're not watching you at all. They're watching themselves. So don't worry about it. But I've got stuff all over my house, like things that remind me. And I leave notes everywhere. I leave Post-it notes. I write to myself all the time. I write to my kids all the time. Because it's almost like I love food. Like I love to eat every day, so I'm kind of an expert in the field. And for me, like leaving notes and having things around the house are like snacks for my brain. And I have this megalodon shark, and it's like this 4-foot shark that's in my bedroom to the side of where my bed is. And every night I look at it, and every morning I look at it. And the reason I have this shark, and I would push you to go and do things that speak to you, right? Like maybe you don't want a shark in your room. Maybe your spouse doesn't. I mean, whatever. But I look at this megalodon shark because there was a time in history that this megalodon shark would get to like 60 or 70 feet. It literally had 0 predators, 0. Top of the food chain. And I look at that shark and it reminds me of 2 things. It's a polarity of truth. And the polarity of truth that it reminds me of is that I look at it and go, you know what? No matter how big a problem seems, no matter how big an issue is, it might not be there tomorrow. That megalodon shark is extinct. So no matter how scary something looks, it might not be there tomorrow. It also reminds me of this: no matter how big I get, no matter how far I go, no matter how high to the food chain I might go within my industry or my business or whatever, there's going to be a day that I don't swim anymore. So let's just keep it in perspective. Keep things that matter, keep them mattering. Silly as that sounds. That's why I have a shark in my bedroom. Get the magnets right. One of the things I've learned about success and mindset is that, remember back when you were a kid, right? And you would play with, I had these 2 little magnets in like my desk drawer, and I would put them on the desk because I wasn't paying attention in school. You already know that. And if you take these 2 magnets, if you get one reversed, you get it close to it and it pushes the other one away. You've done this, and you can like do this and push it around the table, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about. What happens is this though: what we do in life, what we do in relationships, what we do in marriages, what we do in business, what we do with people, what we do with everything around us, fitness, health, spirituality, all the walks of our life. What we do is we take the magnet and we push them together, and then we hold them together. And we're like, all right, we got it. But the second we let pressure up, it does this. And then we go, cool, I know what I'll do. I'll stand on the damn thing. If I stand on it, then I can hold it together. But the moment we walk away, the magnet pops off. And the big trick is to figure out how to get the magnets correct. The big trick is to choose things that pull you, that don't just push you. Like there's all kinds of crap out there that would say, choose something that pushes you. I don't love being pushed. I don't. And my guess is you don't like being pushed either. So quit choosing things that push you. I want you instead to choose things that pull you, because they're going to have to pull you through the dark days. They're going to have to pull you through the days that you can't even believe in yourself, and to pull you through the work and the challenge. You see, I want you to be incredibly careful about your have-to-dos. You see, we say things. I was on a coaching call with someone and they go, blah, 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 blah. I have to do blank or I have to do blank. And I just thought, quit it, quit it. Be careful because you're always thinking, you're always listening. And it's been said before that the mind, the brain can't tell the difference between fact or fiction. So be careful what you tell it. My point is this. You look down at your business and you go, I have to lead generate, or I have to make my calls, or I have to do my cards, or I have to do my lead generation, or I have to take my notes, like whatever it is, right? Like I have to do my workout. The problem is you go back to when you were a little tyke or a little tychus, you didn't like doing the things you have to do. In fact, you fought the things that you had to do. I don't like the things I have to do. So therefore, I'm not going to do them for very long. The moment I can weasel out of them, I'm going to quit doing them. And I promise you, your brain is playing tricks on you. So what I want you to think of is this. I want you to instead to think of, and I'll say it this way, let's see if I can get it right. I want your have to do's to become willing to do's. And if you're okay doing it, your willing to do could become your get to do. And on that day, your get to do becomes your get to have. I'll tell you what I mean. You go to the doctor, and the doctor says, you know what? You've lived like garbage for the majority of your life. You've got to lose some weight. You've got to work out. You got to quit eating butter. You got to do something, right? Now go for a walk every night. Like I remember there was a day that I was 65 pounds heavier than I am today. And I'm 5'11", always wanted to be 6, didn't make it. But an extra 65 pounds on me doesn't look amazing. And I looked down. I remember looking at the scale. And I thought, no more days like this. This is the last day like this. And I remember one of the trainers I worked with early on, I was like, all right, how long will it take? And he laughed and he goes, listen, you didn't get this fat overnight, so it's going to take you a while. And I thought, well, that's kind of mean, but it was true. It was reality. Here's what I mean. You go for a walk. And let's say you're 60 and you've never really walked. Like you don't like to work out. You don't like doing it. And so you're willing to go. You're like, all right, I'm willing to go. I'm willing to do it. Before you know it, a week or two or a month in, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm looking forward to my walk. I want to go. And from there, you get to the get to haves. But for as long as you put those things that you know you need to do in a bucket of have to do, you're going to fight it. You're going to fight your have to do. So quit putting them there. Instead, I'd push you. I would just push you. I would beg you, put them in a bucket that says, you know what? I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to make my calls today. I'm willing to lead generate today. I'm willing to take my notes today. I'm willing to go into the CRM today. I don't have to. I don't have to do anything because you're going to push back on your have to do's. Human beings will push back. I want you to think about every tough time you've had in your life, like every tough day. You realize as hard as it might be, by the way, if you're a human being and you've had tough days, like you have had shitty days, but you have 100% survival rate. You've made it through every one. Those days that you didn't know if you could keep breathing, you're still here. Those problems that you looked at right in the face and you stood there toe to toe, scared to death, not even knowing what to do next, not even knowing what step to take, you're still standing. You're still here. You see, it was Og Mandino that said this. He said, most of us never realize our greatness due to being consumed with secondary focuses. Keep the things that matter in front of you. If it matters to you, you won't be able to stop thinking about it. And when you look down and you think to yourself, oh, I've got to do this or this or this to force myself to do it, just make peace with the fact you don't want to do it. Just be all right with that. Just own it. Most of us say things that we don't mean. But you have a 100% survival rate. You've made it through all of it. You see, because we don't get that which we want in life, we get that which meets our standards. So when you think about your spouse, the challenges that you might have with your spouse or your friend or your business or whatever, your faith, your health, all that stuff, your kids, all those things, you don't get what you want. Damn it, you get what you'll allow. You'll get what your standards are. People will treat you at the level of which your standard will allow them to. And if you want to change it, then you just have to raise your standards. Like you have to be willing to say, I will not allow it. I am unwilling to do that. And when you get clear about your unwillings, then you'll get clear about where you're actually going. I'm unwilling to deal with that. I am unwilling to accept that. I'm unfreaking willing for that to happen. And everybody has something different, right? Like there's somebody out there that if they gain 2 or 3 pounds, they immediately lose it. They are unwilling to be 3 pounds overweight. That's fine. We're all different. There's somebody else who's unwilling to go without money. Like they will not live without money. They'll work 3 jobs, they'll find money, they'll steal money, they'll do whatever it takes. They're unwilling to go without it. Like you've heard people say before, like you've heard the analogy of the apprentice that gets the master and says, "Master, I want to become who you are. I want to do what you do." And the master says, "Cool, meet me at the beach tomorrow morning at 4. You've heard this story. And so the apprentice shows up and the master's there and the master says, "Come on." And they walk out into the water. And they keep going until the water's up to here. And then they keep going to where the water's above the head. And they are now treading water. They're having to swim to stay afloat. They're having to swim to breathe. And the master reaches over to the apprentice and shoves the apprentice underwater and holds her there. And then ultimately lets her up. And she comes out of the water gasping for breath. And the master says, "Do you get it?" And she's like, "What?" And he goes, "Great." Shoves her back under the water. She comes back up. And he says, when you want whatever it is that you're after, as bad as you want that air, that's when you'll begin to achieve it. See, and in that moment, you can't see the problems. In that moment that you're underwater and you're literally gasping for air, can't see all the things that derail you. You can't see all the things that keep you from where you want to go. You have a singular focus. Are you willing to do what it takes to get it? Is this going to be day 1, or is it going to remain one day for you? The whole world is begging. The whole world is waiting for this to be your day 1. The whole world is waiting for you to become that which you know you want to be. The whole world's waiting for you to be your superpower. We need it. Like if there was a time that we need it more than ever, we're in it. Those people who believe in you, I want you to keep them close. Don't let those people who believe in you, don't let them go. You do what it takes to keep them in your life. I've always had people in my life who believed in me. That's why sometimes I'm real clear about stopping versus quitting. When I ran a search and rescue team, we were on this rescue. We were in Sitka, Alaska, and we were looking for this guy. It was day 3 or day 4 of the search. It was at the point where it was like, we're not sure we're going to find him, right? And we're in Alaska. Weather's horrendous. It's shitty. It's exactly what you would expect it to be. And they take the 5 of us, like our team. We were the team that they would send in, like when they thought, all right, we think we know where this guy is. Let's go there. Let's put in like this group, right? And they put us in a helicopter. The weather opened just enough to get up above the clouds. And it was Mount Edgecombe was the whatever. You don't know. I could tell you anything. You're just going to believe it. It was Mount Edgecombe in Sitka. And we went to like 9,200 or 9,500 feet, really high, well above the tree line. And we're in this helicopter, and somebody had spotted some tracks, like when they were flying around, and they thought, we know where this guy is, right? And so they're dropping us above it. And I remember the pilot looked back and he goes, "I got good news and bad news." And we're like, all right. He goes, "Good news is we're going to be okay. Bad news is I don't have enough fuel to get us all back down in this weather." And we're like, all right. And he goes, "So here's what we're going to do. All this happened in like 30 seconds. He goes, all right, I'm going to take the skids of the skids of the helicopter, and I'm going to jam them into the side of the mountain. I'm already out. Like I'm already like, nope, bad idea. Don't do that." He goes, "I'm going to stick it into the side of the mountain. The helicopter," he called it a bird. "The bird's going to do this, and you guys get the hell out." And we're like, and like 18 seconds later, into the snow, we're hovering, and we just start dumping out of the helicopter. We're up so high, it's so steep. We're walking and walking and walking, and we're like doing this side trekking thing, right? And I slipped. And I've always been afraid of falling. And I slip and I start to slide, and I'm doing what we're trained to do in the snow. I'm kicking my heels in to stop myself, and I'm not stopping. And in front of me, I see like these black rocks. And the only thing that black rocks mean at that altitude is cliff. And I'm thinking to myself, you know how like when your whole life flashes before you? Like that's the moment for me. I'm sure it only lasted 8 or 9 seconds or even 5, but it felt like 15 minutes. And I finally, like I turned around and I kicked in my toes and I was able to stop. But at this point, I had fallen about 25 or 30 feet from the other 4 guys. And I looked up and my eyes immediately found my best friend, Paul. Find those people who believe in you and keep them close. Paul looked at me and I looked at him. There was no like scurrying back up. He reached above his back and he grabbed his ice axe and he looked at me and he smiled and he just went like this. And he kind of did this 1, 2, and on the 3, he threw it. And it was like out of a movie, right? Like the whole time I'm scared to death. I reach out. He threw that thing so damn well. He threw it right to my hand. I reached out, grabbed it, and I was able to use that ice axe to get back up to the rest of the guys. And at that moment, like you realize how close you were to the end. You realize. And I got there and Paul looked at me and he goes, I knew you had that. Find those people who believe in you. Keep them close by. Don't let them out of your life. Those people who are there to support you, those people who won't stop believing in you, those people who build you up. You find those people that are your biggest cheerleaders. And by the way, you go be that person for somebody else. You look at somebody and you say, listen, you know what? On those days that you don't believe in yourself, you can borrow my belief. I've got enough in you. You can borrow mine. There's some things that are true that even though they're true, they don't help you. Has there been a time in your life that you've learned something that was true, but it actually didn't help? I remember, man, when I first became a real estate agent, I was 20 years old. I used the money that I had to finish my licensing and get into the business. And I remember the first day that I went to the office. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. It was a Monday. And I don't know the loneliest place on the planet, but the second loneliest place on the planet is a real estate office at 8 a.m. on a Monday, right? Like there ain't nobody there. And long story short, at the end of that first day, my sales manager, who went on to be one of the most important people in my life, at the end of that day, he said, Cody, as long as you sell a house a week around here, you're going to be okay. And I was dead broke, and I thought, that sounds good. And it was 16 weeks later. It was Thursday. And I walked into his office, and I said, hey, can I get an extension till Monday? He goes, extension for what? And I said, well, I haven't, like, I guess it was 17 weeks later on Thursday. I said, I haven't sold a house yet this week. I've got 16. This is week 17. It's Thursday. Can I get an extension till Monday? I've got offers out. I've got showings. I've got open on Saturday, whatever it takes, whatever it takes. And he looked at me and he didn't mean it negative in any sense of the imagination, but people usually don't. But he looked at me and he said, Cody, nobody sells a house a week forever. You're doing amazing. And it took me 4 months to sell my next house. And of course, the only difference was what changed in my mind. I was told to sell a house a week and you're going to be okay. What I heard was sell a house a week and we will keep you. So therefore, I thought it was possible. The moment I didn't think it was possible, the moment that I thought it's not even probable, and by the way, that was probably the truth, but the truth didn't help me. The truth didn't move me forward. So even if it is the truth, be careful what you put in your brain. You see, I think at the end of the day, we're all self-made. Like I'm self-made, you're self-made. We're all self-made. It's just the highly successful people who are willing to admit it. The people that look down that go, I don't love where my life is, are unwilling to say, I'm self-made. The people that look down and say, I'm broke, are unwilling to say, I'm self-made. By the way, usually being broke, man, that's just a result of how you view the world. That's just the state that you're in. And I want you to think for a moment about the idea of the rear view mirror versus the windshield. And I think about it like this, right? Like, I mean, you think about your car and you think about the size of the windshield that you have in proportion to the size of the rear view mirror. Now, are both important? Yes, but one's vital. The windshield's vital. The rear view mirror is not vital. You could turn around and look back there. But you think about the amount of time in your life that you drive, I'm going to assume that less than 1% of 1% of all the time you spend behind the wheel, do you need to spend looking in the rearview mirror? And I think life looks like that. There's some things in my rearview mirror that I don't love. There's some days I'd love to not go back to. There's some challenges and some pains and some heartache and some issues. There's some dark days I would love to never visit again. But damn it, they live in the rearview mirror. They don't live in the windshield. And I want you to think what's in front of you is more important than what's behind you. Now, it doesn't mean that what you've learned doesn't help you. Of course, like some of those things in the rearview mirror, if you want to stick with the analogy, of course, some of those things help. They help if you learn from it. They help if you get value from it. But I would tell you to spend your time looking out the front, not looking out the back. You see, I believe that if you're breathing, there's a reason for you to be here. I believe that if you're here doing something, there's some level of passion, there's some goal, there's some drive, there's some dream that's only in your heart. I don't think that people get the same dream. I think people get similar dreams, but there's something that you're meant to do, and that's why you're here. And it's not too late. I don't believe in too late. Like I need to know this. Number one, you are not defined by this problem. I want you to think about the biggest problem you have in your life. You're not defined by this. This is not the end of you. This is not where your story ends. It might be where the next story begins, though. Nobody likes tough days. But when you look back on tough days in your life, I'll bet they look kind of like mine. I'll bet at some level you think to yourself, you know what? It's made me who I am. It's created what I have. And as much as I wouldn't want to go back to it, it's a powerful piece of my story. People say stupid things. These are just my thoughts. These are just my thoughts. People say dumb things like live a life of no regrets. Screw you, man. I've got regrets. I've got things that I would not make the same decision twice. That means regret. I also can learn from those decisions. And I can also say, you know what? Those things made me who I am, who I became and who I grew to and what I learned during that. Yeah, that makes me who I am. But I'm okay with saying there's a positive from it, but if I could re-choose it, I wouldn't choose it twice. It's like people say dumb things. They say things like failure is not an option. That's the dumbest thing I've heard. Failure is always an option. I mean, that's like saying, you know what? We're going to get married, baby, and divorce is not an option. Screw you. Go by the courthouse tomorrow. Divorce is an option. Someone's getting divorced. I think that the most successful people are willing to acknowledge it. They're just unwilling to do it. Do you get my point? There was, people say things like there's like it's not an option or failure's not an option. When I was I did a lot of rafting in Alaska, and in rafting, you would always look towards danger. You wouldn't put your head in the sand. Like you wouldn't ignore it. You would look towards danger so you knew where it was so you could avoid it. And I've constantly thought that in my business life, my professional life, my family life. Like, let's just face it. Let's just stare it right in the face and know where I don't want to go. I don't want to go there. So what's it going to take to avoid it? How do I not go over there? Remember, you're not defined by this problem. Your success isn't final, but your failure also isn't fatal. Like, you know that. Like, people say things like, you know what? I mean, there's somebody who's living in something they did 3 years ago. 3 years ago is over. 10 years ago is over. What you and I have is today. We don't know if we have tomorrow, but we do have this. We have this right now. We get so weird about failure. We get so worried about failure. But I'll bet you everything you've achieved in your life looks like mine. And it came on the other side of failure. You see, discomfort is always going to follow growth and failure. Which you experience will be determined by your decisions, but you're going to have it. It was I love that quote where it says, you're going to choose one of two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The problem is the pain of discipline weighs ounces while the pain of regret weighs tons. And I'll bet you've experienced it too. I know I have. Rejection isn't what you think it is. One of the things that keeps us from achieving is rejection. One of the things that, I mean, and I've spent a career working with salespeople and training salespeople and being a salesperson, and I love it. But one of the challenges, and it's not even just salespeople, it's every people, it's just salespeople who look at it right in the face every day, is this issue of rejection and this worry of rejection. And I remember I was stepping off stage one day, and I had the ability, I was speaking in this big room. There's probably 10,000 people. And I walked off stage, and this young guy, which makes me feel old, this young guy walks up and goes, "Cody, I want to be just like you someday." And I thought to myself, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because I know me, and that's a terrible decision. And I looked at him and I said, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Man, I want to be so good at rejection that it rolls right off my back like it does for you." And man, whew, man, in that moment, I said, "That's stupid." I said, "I hope for you that you never experience enough rejection, that it becomes second nature. I hope for you that you never experience enough rejection, that you ever become okay with it. I hope for you that rejection always slaps you right in the face and that it stops you dead in your tracks." I said, "I think what you've done is you've mistaken my willingness to hear the word no with my likingness of rejection. I hate rejection, but I'm willing to hear the word no." Here's how I look at the world with this. The most wealthy person I know said, "Cody, the only people that can actually reject you are people who might be at your deathbed someday." So the dad that disowns a son, that's rejection. A wife that says to the husband, "Listen, I don't know if I loved you in the beginning, but I know I don't love you today." That's rejection. Some sales call that says no or no thanks or get the hell out of here, that's not rejection, because they'd never be at the deathbed. The problem, though, is that if we label it, our brain can't tell the difference between the experience, because we label it rejection. So why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we fight it with all that we have? I think you just have to flip the narrative on the idea of rejection. When I was 5, my mom sat me down with my brother and said, "Listen, never wanted to have kids. I'm stuck with the two of you. And from this day forward, you can call me ma'am or Mrs. by her last name." And for the next year or 14 months, I mean, I was 5, I don't remember, but for the next long time, I called my mom ma'am. And that lives in a little box titled rejection, which is right where it belongs. But some sales call that says no or not right now or don't call me back or take me off your list, man, that's not rejection. That's just someone that said no. The problem is we put so much ego into it that we make everything about ourselves. And remember, ego is an acronym, right? Ego stands for edging God out or eliminating growth opportunities, whichever you want to believe in. But be real careful what you label rejection, because you're going to experience it. And I would hope for you that you get real clear on this. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. Like, we can only see through the lens at which we look at the world. It's kind of like how we, we judge ourselves based on our actions or intentions. We judge, let me say it right. We judge others by their actions. We judge ourselves by our intentions, because we know what we meant. We know what we wanted to do. We knew that we didn't want to hurt someone or that we didn't want that to happen. And things like, this, and the core of who you are, that things don't get easier. You know that things don't get easy. You simply get better at the task, and it looks easier to other people. But in the moment, you want it to be easier, but you don't even like easy. It's not interesting to you, and you won't chase it, and you won't do it. I want you to go and choose those things that are just outside of that comfort level, things that are just outside of your grasp, and I want you to work your ass off to get to them. But if you choose the wrong thing, you won't do it. And I think one of the challenges that we find is that people choose things they're not that into. They choose things they're not that interested in. They choose people and partners and friends and faiths and hobbies that they don't care about. You see, as long as you attach your willingness to do something with your likingness of doing it, you're never going to get where you want to go. Like, you have to be willing to stick when it's hard. You have to be willing to say, "You know what? On the hardest possible day, I'm going to be there. And you know what? You might beat me today. Damn it, you might get me today. You got me today, but I'll be here tomorrow. You can't get me tomorrow. I'm coming back tomorrow. I'm going to come back, and I'm going to beat it tomorrow." And maybe you will, and maybe you won't. But you cannot beat somebody who won't quit. Are you willing to be somebody who won't quit? Remember, people don't care that much about what we're doing. Everyone's worried about what they're doing, though we're always worried about how people see us and what they think of us. Nothing worth having comes easy. You know that. So why do you get so worked up when it's not easy? What if you just said, you know what? I'm going to fight for this. I've learned, one of the things I've learned, like especially this year, is that sometimes I just need 1%. Just a 1% chance. Just 1%. Like I've learned that one of the greatest things about how I'm wired and one of the greatest things about what I've come from is that if there's just 1% of hope, it's all I need. It's all I need. Now, the moment I know that there's none, the moment that I'm at zero, I'm out, Cub Scout. Like I'm gone. Zero, I'm gone. Like I don't fight battles I can't win, but all I need is 1%. You show me a 1% chance, I'm all in. It's a superpower of who I am. And I think it's a superpower of who you are. I just think maybe we forget to tap into it sometimes. Like I love the story Lone Survivor. And I grew up, my whole life, I grew up wanting to be a Navy SEAL. And I worked at it and worked at it. I became a dive instructor and a rescue diver. I did the search and rescue thing, and I did rope rescue, and I rode the ambulance, and blah blah blah. And I finally got the Navy to agree to make me a SEAL. And I was going to be a medic on a SEAL platoon. It was either platoon 8 or 9. And I went to day number 1, and they do all the testing. And the lady looks at me like they're doing all the stuff, and they did the eye color test, like you know the little dots, like the little colored dots, and you look at them and you see a number. Well, there was like 22 cards and I got 7 of them right. She looked at me and she said, how long have you been colorblind? And I mean, I didn't know I was colorblind, and I've kind of always been a smart ass. And I said, well, I'm guessing my whole life. I don't think that there's like late onset color blindness. And she said, well, I'm going to need you to go sit in this room. And I went and I sat in this room for what seemed like hours. It's probably 30 minutes. I got no idea. But it was just like out of a movie, like a metal desk in a weird room. And I'm sitting there, and somebody came in holding a file, and they said, we can't make you a SEAL. And in that moment, like my life was crushed. It was all I wanted to work towards. It was all that I wanted. And in that moment, to me, I would have told you life was over. But life wasn't over. And I said, well, why? And he goes, well, if we tell you to cut the blue wire and you cut the wrong one, that's a problem. And I thought, that's a really, really good point. 2 years later, the Navy called and said, hey, we'll make the same deal. We'll make you a medic on a platoon. We now allow color corrective lenses. But at that point, I was like, no way. I'm making great money. I think I was making over 200 grand a year. I was making great money. Nobody was shooting at me. And I thought, no, screw you, man. That sounds terrible. And that was the first time in my life that I realized one of the greatest truths, which was this: that which you might think you want may be the last thing you want when you understand something better exists. Think about that one for a second. Because that day that I couldn't become a SEAL, I didn't know what to do. I remember I walked out of the building. That was it. I said, I'm not doing it. And I went and I sat in the parking lot and cried because everything had come to that. Like that was it for me. That was it for me. And my guess is you've had those moments in your life too. You see, if all you can do is bend, that which can only bend will never break. And I would beg you to be a bendable person. If you can just bend, you won't break. Our world is full of broken people. And I think at the end of the day, we're living an illusion anyway. Like I look down and I think to myself, man, I mean, I remember I was 14, 15. I dropped out of high school. I was done, never to go back to school. And I just went to work, and I knew I could win with people. And I think, I mean, these are just my thoughts, right? But I think I look at my life and I look at my business and I look at what I'm doing in the world today, and I think I'm not even supposed to be doing this anyway. I mean, I am because I'm doing it, but the world would say that you're not. And it's just an illusion. Like we get to live the life that we design. The problem is that cuts both ways, because you're going to be stuck living the life you design. So why not design a good one? Like, why not you? Why couldn't you? The people that do it aren't any smarter than you. The people that achieve what you want to do, they're not better. Like they weren't born, like they didn't win the birthplace lottery. People that do big things are scared to death. People that do itty bitty things are scared to death. They just let it stop them. I remember when I was on the rope rescue team, we were coming down this one ice cliff and we were doing this rescue, and it was called a pick-off, and that doesn't matter. And I'm on the rope and I'm scared to death. I've always hated heights. So why I went down that road, no idea. But the guy who ran our team at the time was right next to me. And I looked over, like my legs were shaking, my body was shaking. And his name's Chuck, incredible human being. I said, Chuck, like I'm red faced, like I am freaking out. I said, I am scared to death. And he looked at me and he smiled and he said, that's why you're the safest person on the team. He said, your fear is what gives you the respect of loss. He said, just keep going. And I kept going. And I want you to think just for a moment, that shit that you're afraid of, that's not bad. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. We get fear mixed up with we shouldn't do it. Like we find a business and we get afraid of it and we go, oh, maybe I shouldn't do it. We find a partner or an amazing person and we get afraid and we go, oh, maybe they're the wrong one. That it may be, but it also might just be bullshit. It also might just not be true. It might just be the very thing that gives you enough caution to do it the right way. Susan Jeffers, in her book, wrote about how wealthy people feel fear. They just keep moving anyway. Broke people feel fear and they stop. And fear is an acronym. It stands for false expectations appearing real. So what is it? What are you afraid of? Man, are you afraid of being rejected? Well, we already talked about that one. Are you afraid of failing? We talked about that. I mean, take your pick. I mean, somebody the other day, they said, oh, blah, blah, blah. They said, you're so lucky. And I said, yeah, I'm not here to argue with anybody. But inside, I'm like, lucky? What are you talking about? There's no luck. Like you create it or you live with the other outcome, but there is no luck involved with it. And the old saying is the harder you work, the luckier you get. But are you willing to do the things that scare the hell out of you? Are you the person that sticks or the person that runs? If you're the person that sticks, then you're going to find those things and you're going to move forward. And I want you to think, as we're beginning to wrap up here in a few minutes, I want you to think a few thoughts that work internally. The challenges that you have. I've got pains, you've got pains, we've all got our stuff, right? I mean, I remember like there was I would have been like 4 or 5, and I didn't have a mom who should probably have been a mom. Like but everybody does the best they can, right? Like one of the things I've learned about human beings is everyone's doing the best they can at any moment. And one of the great mentors of my life, her name's Diana, she used to teach me this. She would say, people are doing the best they can. And our judgment of them is our suffering. So mom did the best she could. But I remember there was one day that she just flipped out. And there were some, I was 4 or 5, right? And so just bear with me on the story. There was some underwear that weren't super clean. I think there's a reason why underwear should be black. And like she flipped out. And she had me wear that underwear on my head the rest of the day. And she would say things like, you're such a shithead. Look at you, you're a shithead. And for years, I lived with that. For years, I lived with what that meant to me. For years, I lived with how that made me feel and how I viewed who I was. But my point is this: we all have a past, but our past doesn't have to be the present. And the present for sure doesn't have to be the future. And there's nothing that says those things they would have to continue. You can stop whatever that cycle is. You can stop whatever that pattern is. But if we don't go back, like if we don't go back and solve some of those problems internally, if we don't go back and heal some of those things, then what we do is we end up bleeding all over people that never cut us. Now, I've got that internal work and you've got internal work. And I want you to do it. And I think that when you get better at something, you get better at everything. And so when you work on that internal work, because everything's an inside out thing, I think when we do those, all the other stuff becomes easier. You do that, making the next sales call becomes easier because the next sales call is just a sales call. There is nobody who goes to their deathbed and goes, you know what, that one sales call, no one gives a shit. Like it doesn't matter. It's just one of the things you do to get the things you want to have. And if you're unwilling to do it, then the truth is like you actually don't want it very bad. Like that person who's willing to do anything, you know them. You've even been them. Everyone's been at the point in their life where they would do literally anything. They would move heaven and earth. They would do anything. And the challenge is what we do is when we're trying to achieve something or do something, one of the things that we overlook is that time is one of the most important ingredients. Here's what I mean. Let's say, I don't know. We've all had a hellacious year at some level, right? And I walked through this year, like one of the hardest things in my life, like some dark days. And I was listening to, like you find inspiration where inspiration can be found. Chew on that for a second. And I was listening to these videos I never thought I'd be listening to, but I needed them, hanging on by a thread. And he said, one of the things he said, and it works in every area of my life. He said, don't forget time is maybe the most important ingredient. And I want you to think of it like this. Let's say that you're going to make a cake, right? And you've got this amazing recipe. You're excited for the cake. I mean, I like cake. By the way, there's some people out there who could eat and eat and eat and never gain weight. I hate those people, man. Like they could eat a mountain of macaroni and cheese and never gain an ounce. Screw them. I could walk by chocolate cake and get fat. I digress. So you have this amazing cake that you want to make, and you have this incredible ingredient list, and you got the recipe. And you know, if you put in too much flour, it's going to suck. You put in not enough, it's going to suck. It's got to be just freaking right. And you're willing to do it. But then at the end, it says bake for 45 minutes. If you're anything like me, what we do instead is we're like, no. I'm going to turn the heat up really high and cook it for 20 minutes. And if I do that, it'll be quicker. Like I ain't got time. Like I want it yesterday and today, and yesterday didn't work. So today's acceptable. No, time is maybe the most important ingredient because you can't rush it. If you pull that cake out at 30 minutes, it's going to be a mess. By the way, if you wait too long, it's going to be a mess. It's got to be right. I need you to make peace with time being maybe the most important ingredient of all of them. And it's the one you're going to fight because we want everything right now. Like we're an instant gratification. Like that's who we are. And I get it. All right. So here's 6 things. Here's 6 things to move you like out of a problem. Like if you're in a bad spot, like I love the saying, if you're going to fall down on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up. And if you can get up, you can keep moving. Like everybody knows it, right? Like get knocked down 5 times, get up 6. Like we know it. We would teach our kids it, but then we forget to live it. And we somehow think when we get knocked down that we weren't supposed to. You see, when it comes to people, I've learned this. I never trust what people say because people can be full of shit. Like words are cheap. I rarely trust what people do because actions could be faked. I mean, anybody could fake an action for a short amount of time to get something they want. But you know what I've learned? I've learned to always trust patterns. See, because patterns are true. And when somebody shows you repeatedly who they are or how they are, then you got to start believing them, including yourself. And I think that's the biggest of all of them. So when I say that, I think about other people. But what I really think about is me. What are my words? I said this was my goal. How many times has that been my goal that I didn't do it? A lot. And then my actions. I could fake myself out for a short amount of time, but what are my patterns? You see, the lies that we tell ourselves are the biggest lies that exist. those little internal ones that creep up on you, and you begin to believe them. And before you know it, it's the identity that you have. We've all got our stuff. So here's six things. Number one, get clarity and face the facts. If it's the reality, it's the reality. I remember when I used to ride the ambulance as a trauma technician on a search and rescue team. We never really got to do anything medical. Like if we got there too late, it was a body recovery. Not fun. Or we got there and somebody had like a sprained ankle. We just had to carry them out. Not a big deal. But like the medic stuff, the stuff that I was interested in, we didn't get to do very often. So to keep the certification active, I would go and I'd ride the ambulance at the fire department. And I found there was two types of people. If you're the person who breaks your leg and there's a bone sticking out of your leg, there's two types of people. Type number one says, I got to look. I need to see it. Type two says, I can't look. I don't know that either one is wrong or right, but I am 100% a looker. I'm the one who goes, I got to look at it. Just show me. I got to see it. I got to know how bad it is. I got to know. Just show me. Reality. If you're in a tough spot, I want you to own it. By the way, there's an old saying, fake it till you make it. And I used to believe that. I used to believe it with everything that I was. There was a time I would have been 19 and I had landed this job by lying. I had landed this, and if you won't lie for a job, you don't want it. I landed this job where I was selling diesel engines for Cummins. And I was 19. I didn't know shit about diesel engines, but I knew people. And everybody around me looked like a sales engineer. And I bought some khaki pants and some boots and like a blue Oxford shirt. I dyed my hair gray. Like I got like this gray dye and I dyed my hair gray, made me look a little bit older. Like I was 19. I couldn't go and sell. Like you've heard Fort Knox. There is a Fort Knox. It's in Fairbanks, Alaska. And I would go there and sell $200,000 and $400,000 engines to these people. They didn't buy them from a kid. I dye my hair gray. And I went to Costco and I bought some glasses, you know, the fake ones that don't have like a prescription. I bought glasses and I put on glasses and I dyed my hair gray and I looked about 27 or 28. So I always think to myself, that year of my life, I lied my ass off. And that year of my life, I spent the whole year trying to look older. Now that I'm 40, I realize I've spent the rest of my life trying to look younger. Like, how's that for some perspective? But my point about 19 minutes ago when I started that story was fake it till you make it. I don't believe that anymore. I do believe face it until you make it. Just look at it right in the face. I don't think it's faking it. I think that you face it until you make it. I think you face it and I think you work at it until one day you understand, here's how I move forward. So you face it. Number two, I want you to honor yourself and the lesson for the season that you're in. If you're struggling with something, and welcome to earth, man. If you're struggling with something and you're fighting something, I want you to honor yourself for the lesson that you're learning, because it's going to be this lesson that you look back at someday and you go, I'm so glad I walked through it. But nobody says, I'm glad I'm walking through it. And that's okay. I don't think you need to enjoy walking through it. I just think you need to understand it's part of the process. And there will come a day that you look back and you're glad that you did. That doesn't mean you have to enjoy doing it. For God's sakes, you don't. Number three, I want you to change a habit or a routine as fast as you can. If you want to change an outcome of something, change something. Like there was a time in my life, like this year's been weird for me, right? Like as a professional speaker, I canceled 75 speaking days back in March. And then now I stare at a camera in the basement of my house. That's weird for me. I've never slept in my own bed this many days in a row. Never, ever, ever. And if you need to get out of a rut, or if you need to get up, if you need to change something, if you need to do something, then the easiest thing to do is to change the little things, change the little habits. Sleep on the other side of the bed, sleep on the couch, sleep on the floor. Change something about a routine or a habit, because when you change a habit or a routine, you begin to utilize the law of habit stacking, and you begin to habit stack and you could change anything. But it's hard to change the big stuff. It's easy to change the little things. So change those and you'll find the big ones are easier. Number four is I want you to give up to get up. You may have to give something up. You may have to give up a belief. You may have to give up a desire. You may have to give up an outcome or a result. You may have to look down. I mean, I had to look down this year with something and just say, you know, as much as I want this, I have to give up the result that's the only option. I have to be okay with option number two. And the moment that I was truly okay with option number two, I found ways for option number one. But we get so hung up on things having to be a certain way. Are you stuck with this having to be your way? Or are you open to something better? You see, I believe this in life. We are constantly either dealing with a problem, getting over a problem, or moving to a problem. One of the three. And people say things like they love surprises. You're full of shit. People don't love surprises. What you love is good news that you didn't expect. Surprises that you don't like, you call problems. And I'm with you because I do too. Number 5, help somebody else. Man, sometimes the easiest path forward is to help somebody else because you can't outgive people. It can't be done. So when you're struggling and when you're down and when you're facing the biggest demons and the biggest problems of your life, just go help somebody. Like you can't outgive other people. The worst thing that happens is that you're going to feel good about helping someone. And I loved like one of the notes in my bedroom right now says, help someone today who can't help you back. And in my world, in all the right ways, I get manipulative. And I don't mean that in a negative way at all. Like I'm going to go and do this favor for someone because I want to help them and it's going to be a good favor. But I also know that there's going to come a day I need a favor from that person. I'm going to call them and say, can you help me? And they're going to say yes. And that's come true this year more than any other year. But it's not quite pure. Yes, I want to help, but there's also a reason to help. But you know what is pure? Helping someone who can't help you back. Helping someone who can do nothing for you. Go do that. And that's one of the easiest ways to move forward. Number 6, remember that time's an ingredient. Remember that at the end of the day, no matter how good you do it, no matter how much you put into it, if you're unwilling to use time, you can't fix it. You need the time. And sometimes that time is just for you to grow. I'll leave you with this thought. Like our world needs love. We need love. Our businesses need love. Our families, our churches, our schools, everything. And maybe you've struggled with something this year. Maybe you've walked through a difficult time. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. So as long as you haven't become indifferent to something, there's hope for you. If you've got a personal relationship challenge or relationship problem, as long as you haven't become indifferent, even if you ride the line of hate for a little while, as long as you haven't gone to indifferent, there's hope. And if there's hope, there's possibility. And if there's possibility, you can move forward. When there's 0%, there's 0%. You got to face that and move on, my man. But if there's 1%, you might be surprised how 1% becomes 99%. There's an old reality that people say that 2% of businesses make it. That doesn't mean that you have a 2% chance. It just means 2% make it. It just means that 2% are willing to do the work that it takes to win. Are you willing to be a dream buyer, or are you just going to be a dream believer forever? There's a difference, and they look different. I think you can do anything you want to do. I think the problem is you're going to do anything you want to do. You got to face that one. Like you wrestle that one at night. No one else wrestles it for you. And at some point, you have to do your own push-ups. Are you willing to do them? Like people can't do them for you. All right. It's been 70 minutes. This has been my pleasure to be here. We have just talked about mindset. I've loved doing this with you. If you would give $1 or $1 bazillion to No Kid Hungry, every single penny goes to them. It's been my pleasure to do it. Cody Gibson at kw.com is PayPal. Cody-Gibson-14 is Venmo. Venmo me some money. I'll take all those dollars. We'll give it right to No Kid Hungry. We started the day at 17,705. We'll see if we reach our goal of 20 grand. It would be my pleasure to be able to send 20,000. Do we have a total yet? All right. So we've raised about 12 or 1,300. We're at 18,450. If that's where we end, it's 18,450 more than we started. And if it's not where we end, that's awesome too. I appreciate each one of you. Cody Gibson at KW, I see that is PayPal. Cody-Gibson-14 is Venmo. Lacey will drop those in. If we haven't connected on Instagram, then connect with me there, Cody Gibson 1. I've enjoyed being here. I'm going to leave you with one final thought. I think that you're an author. And I think that every day you write a page in the story of the book of your life. Just know that there comes a day that you're going to have to read the story. Are you going to like what you read? Be careful who you let hold the pen. Godspeed. Have a great day. Thanks for being here.